Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Merav Yuravlivker. Merav is the CEO of Data Society. Merav, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, JP.
Delighted to have you. So Merav, let's start with yourself, please. Can you give us a bit of background on your journey in tech, from where you got started, some of the roles you've held along the way, and take us just up to before you founded and launched Data Society?
Sure. So some would say I've had a bit of a non-traditional journey into tech. I actually started my career teaching elementary special education in New York City public schools. And that still, by the way, is the hardest job that I've had to date. And while I was in the classroom, I really tried to use data to help inform how I was teaching, really understanding the results for my students and then using that to move them forward and help them learn. But I knew that I wanted to have a bigger impact than just in the classroom. So I moved to an educational nonprofit called the International Baccalaureate Organization. And I was also working with Kaplan as well. And again, in both of those organizations, I was using data to help understand assessments, to help understand how to recruit teachers. You know, throughout my career, my heart's really been in education because I've seen how transformative it can be when it's done correctly. And it really is the way for people to move forward and have such a big impact. But what I also noticed is that data was becoming a bigger and bigger part of our lives. And if we could use that correctly as well, we're really transforming the way that we can work and transforming the impact that we can have. When I was trying to learn how to use data, this was back in 2013, I didn't see resources that were available to me as a professional. So I knew that I could do a master's program. That's tens of thousands of programs, and it's quite a commitment. There were boot camps that were also very intensive and time consuming and expensive. And there were a lot of free resources, but I didn't really know where to start because that wasn't my background. So that's where I was really before Data Society, was in the space of education and understanding that data was important.
Which leads nicely then into my next question, which is, tell us all about Data Society. So it would be great to learn about who you are, what you do, the mission of the business, and you've already teed up the early ideas on why you founded it and launched it. So give us the overview and then walk us through the early days of when you decided to create Data Society.
In a nutshell, our mission is to help professionals use data better. We're combining both the power of education with the power of data and helping professionals acquire a new skill set to really supercharge what they're able to do and better serve constituents, better serve their clients and their mission. Back in 2014, honestly, I'd never really thought about starting a business. I didn't know that option was on the table at that point. But I had a few mutual friends in town who were thinking about it. So the three of us kind of got together and noticed the same problem in different industries. So one of my co-founders was an analyst on Wall Street and saw the power of our programming over Excel in terms of a lot of automation. And we have our other co-founder who's in law and saw similar problems there. And we said, we don't know what types of resources are available to us. Why not build the solution that we would like to have? And let's go from there. So we spent the first few years focusing a lot on individuals, so developing content, doing more of open enrollment programs. And what we found in doing these programs is a lot of the students came back to us and said, hey, I've learned a lot. The material is relatable. I understand how it works, but my team doesn't know how. Can you come in? Can you help us? Can you train our team? So we started to see a slightly different opportunity, where that wasn't really being addressed in the market because these programs didn't exist. We were doing instructor-led trainings. And so you get a lot of that hands-on experience. You get the opportunity to meet other folks within your cohort. And you also have that accountability that doesn't always exist if you're doing something through an online program. And in 2017, 2018, we really thought this was a good niche for us, was to develop custom training programs on an organizational level, because that's how you see change happen. When you get enough individuals within an organization to shift how they are thinking about data and using data, you are effectively changing the way that they work and how they function. And so now we do only B2B. We work with federal agencies, Fortune 500 companies, and other larger organizations to really help their entire workforce become more data driven. And that's been a bit of the evolution over the years.
Thank you for that. And it's super interesting to hear how the concept morphed and evolved to where you are today. Sticking with today, you've already teed up some of the great organizations you're helping. Can you give us some insight into what it's like behind the scenes to be a member of your data team? So the individuals who are helping these organizations become more data driven. Walk us through that journey from first conversation to how you guys work with your customers, and what role your own internal data scientists play in helping you achieve the collective mission.
The first thing that we do with anybody that we speak to is get a good understanding of what their objectives are. What are you trying to achieve? What do you want your team members, your departments to be able to do? And based on those types of conversations, we develop a custom curriculum that meets those objectives. Now, that curriculum can have everything from data science for executives to data literacy for general staff, all the way through intro programming, neural networks, MLOps, and then we do work with Excel, Power BI, and Tableau. So we teach quite a range of topics, but I'm sure you can imagine not everybody needs all of those topics, especially not at the beginning. So a lot of the value comes from having that conversation and curating the right program for those objectives. Internally, we have a team of data scientists as well as instructional designers who work closely together to ensure that all of the materials are both instructionally sound and then also technically sound and relevant. And that's one of the processes we built out really over the course of our company, because we saw a lot of other organizations were dependent on individual instructors. And the challenge with that is that there's not always a sense of consistency across programs. And for us, for me, training is in our DNA, education is where I came from. So for me, it was incredibly important that we keep that standard high. So once we get that curricula, sometimes we customize it to an organization's use cases or a data set to ensure that it's as relevant as possible. We might go back and forth a few times with the clients, but once they decide what the curriculum is, they approve it, we then recommend a schedule. Again, we work with them. Some of our programs are a few days long over the course of a year, multiple times. We have other programs that are 9 months long, but let's say those students only meet once a week for 2 hours, and really everything in between. I would say most of our programs are about 6 to 8 weeks on a part-time basis and typically have what we like to call a capstone project, which is a project that each student works on their own. So they're applying the skills that they're learning in class to an actual challenge that they're having at work. And by the end of the program, not only have they learned these skills, they've already started to apply it back into their work. So we're running these programs. It's fully deployable. We provide the instructors, we train them, we provide assessments as well to demonstrate growth and to better understand how else we can help. Then that's what we do. We run programs for our partners and our clients, and our data scientists. Not only do they ensure the quality of the content, but we've actually automated a lot of the content creation process, because we have a lot of people on our team who like to problem solve and found ways where we could speed up the production of content without compromising the quality.
One of the things that just popped into my head that I definitely wanted to ask you is about how do you guys stay on top of the ever-evolving advancements in data solutions and AI, and to ensure that your training remains up to date and applicable depending on the organization that you're working with and the industry they're in? That's got to be a challenge. So walk us through what's that like day to day and how you guys manage to stay current.
It's absolutely a challenge, and I'll give you two parts to this answer. The first part is we have a process in place to review all of our materials on a regular basis to ensure not only that the topics that we're teaching are relevant, but also that the code is up to date. As you might know, open source tools like R programming and Python programming get updated regularly, so we want to make sure that we're using best practices and not using any deprecated functions or code that doesn't work. We're also practitioners, so we do have a solution side of the house where we build custom software and work with clients to build predictive algorithms. So we're practitioners who are building content, and as we see trends, we're able to incorporate that back into our materials. So from that perspective, we have a really good process in place that we've built over the years to ensure that what we're teaching is as relevant today as the content that we taught 5 years ago was relevant 5 years ago. And obviously there's been a bit of a shift. The second piece to it really is a lot of the concepts, the frameworks, teaching people how to think about data, that in essence doesn't shift. Because if you look at machine learning algorithms, they've been around for decades at least. And the only difference is the computing power that has increased, as well as the ability now to go on cloud computing as well to be able to process much larger amounts of data. But inherently, the framework is still the same. And, we never approach something with a tool first mentality, because the question is, what is the challenge that you need to solve? Talk through the solution and say, okay, what would be the most effective tool to use in order to solve that problem? So the tools and the technology are really a means to an end, but teaching the frameworks about how to think about data, about how to build data strategy, that's something that doesn't change as much because you're still asking the same questions.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
Merav, one of the other things that you're heavily involved in, which we haven't touched on yet, is the effort to promote diversity in the data science space. I know you're the co-organizer of the Women and NB Data Scientists meetup. So can you give us your thoughts on why this is so important to you? And I know it's something you've been championing, particularly at the Data Society when we look at the guy to girl ratio there. Can you just talk to us about that, how that's involved alongside Data Society and why it's so important to you?
Coming from the education world, I didn't really understand the disparity, I would say, until I started to work in the data world. And especially early on, I found myself being one of the only women in the room when it came to meetings. I think representation is incredibly important. And what I'll say is, for our company, we are a majority women company, and that has really been a function of our leadership. I'm not the only woman on our leadership team. We're just split about 50-50. And it has to do with the fact that we try to make a conscious effort to look for individuals across a variety of communities when we're hiring, because it's important to be deliberate about that. And especially as we grow, it's something I'm even more mindful of because we want to stay consistent with that. The strength of our company really comes from the diversity of our team and having the ability to speak to folks who come from different backgrounds, who've had different experiences, who have a different way of approaching problems. That's how we've grown. I feel very lucky, and I tell this to my staff all the time. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to be able to hire people that have ideas that they feel passionate about, and then it's my job to ensure that they're successful in implementing that. And I think we've done a very good job of hiring people and really having a wonderful team that feels empowered to make suggestions and improvements and feels comfortable being themselves. If you're not comfortable being yourself in a work environment, it's difficult to feel comfortable speaking up. And we work very hard. I would say nobody's perfect. We are always thinking about ways that we can be better, because it's not something you can rest your laurels on. You have to actively work at it in order to ensure that the environment feels good for anyone who joins our team. So that's been incredibly important. And then being able to represent just who I am as a person. If that is inspiring to somebody else, that's wonderful. That's absolutely a compliment. Feels like a compliment for me, but really my goal is eventually to get a place where maybe this topic won't come up. And I'm glad that you brought it up. Of course I am. But it would be great to get to a place where, we're all just CEOs or we're all just founders and we have enough parity between different genders across the spectrum where it's more of a shrug as opposed to something notable. So if we can get to that point, that would be great. But until then, I'm happy to champion it however I can.
Well, you're certainly playing your part by very much practicing what you preach with your own hiring strategy, which I want to come to next because you guys are experiencing incredible success and with amazing growth, and that's going to continue. So can you give us some insight into what's next for Data Society, particularly focusing on the continued growth? You're going to need to hire more talented people. What opportunities are there for people who are interested in what you do and want to come on board? Talk to us about what the next 12, 24 months look like.
I'm incredibly excited for the next few years. We have been releasing a product. We've been building a product over the past year that's frankly built on the processes we've built over the past 8 years. That is a learning experience and communications platform. So it really is the first of its kind. We've won some awards recently, actually, that reflect the innovation in the space. And the purpose of this platform is to have an interactive learning experience for students when they're part of the program, but also to continue to foster that community even outside of the classroom. So giving folks an opportunity to find a mentor, an internal mentor, have a mentorship program within an organization, facilitate events, hackathons, and things like that, really developing a community of practice within an organization, which we found to be incredibly rewarding. It really amplifies the innovation and communication that happens across teams. And on top of that, integrating a lot of the challenges that we saw on the learning and development side, being able to implement these types of training programs. So giving them transparency into registrations, into skill levels, giving them the ability to have email templates to send out that are a bit more like marketing as opposed to learning and development, where they can really increase engagement in these types of programs. And all of that is underpinned by our AI algorithms that we've built to help customize learning paths to individuals, to be able to eventually customize use cases and things like that. I'm incredibly proud of our team. They've been working very hard this past year, and we've started to deploy that with some of our clients and are looking forward to releasing it on scale later this year. This is the first product that we've built, and it's really based on a lot of the pain points that we've seen, the requests that we've seen. And I'm incredibly excited for the implication that it has, not only for our company, but also for the world of professional education as a whole. Now, as part of that, we are hiring, we are expanding our team. We went remote during COVID, and we're staying remote. We do have an office in Washington, D.C. for those who like to come in, and we do encourage people to see each other when they can. We're looking for good people, both technical talent and other positions who really enjoy thinking creatively, solving problems. We're still a small company, so there's a lot of opportunity for growth and a lot of opportunity for defining how things are done here. And again, that's how we've grown up to this point. That's really been on the strength of our team. That product coming out is going to be really exciting. And if that's in addition to really all of the training programs that we're running and continue to run. So it's an exciting year. It's an exciting time for us.
Very much so, yeah. Well, look, final question from me. You've built an incredible company, and when you look at when you first launched Data Society back in November of 2014, the topic of data and being a data-driven culture was still a new and novel idea, but it's become mainstream over the last few years, and it's only going to continue to grow in demand. So you guys are perfectly positioned to really help organizations. When you look at what's next, and you look at the next 2-3 years, what are you most excited about for the future of Data Society and the industry as a whole?
I'd like to get to a point where our platform really is deployed across our clients and across other organizations who want to build communities of practice around data internally, and really facilitating and empowering learning and development programs to do what they do best, which is to help facilitate learning. I'm excited for Data Society to be the catalyst for that, because it's really been our passion since day one, is to help transform organizations. And this is just another step in that journey. I'm excited to see more and more organizations thinking about data holistically, becoming data-driven as a whole, because we've seen this communication gap between data and non-data professionals. So they have difficulty communicating because they don't have a common vocabulary. Being able to train up individuals who don't traditionally work in data, but just helping them understand how data works, how they need to be asking questions, you're really unlocking a lot of potential within an organization. And I'd like for us to get to a point where training really is the norm. I know that there are still a lot of organizations out there who see it as optional as opposed to a necessity. And we're seeing how fast the world is changing, how competitive the market is, how competitive the hiring market is. And in order to ensure that your staff is happy, they're engaged, and to ensure that you're able to really empower your workforce, you have to have these types of programs, especially around data, because if organizations aren't becoming data-driven now, it's going to be very difficult for them to keep up in the market in 5 years. We're seeing the impact that it is having already. So I'd like to get to a point, and if we can be at the forefront of this, that would be wonderful, where education is really seen as a necessity for a workplace and it's not seen as an option.
Merav, thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us. It really was a pleasure to learn about the journey of Data Society, your background and the origin story behind it, and the impact that you guys are having for organizations of all shapes and sizes. I think you guys are perfectly positioned now to have an incredible impact on the industry as a whole and help organizations become more data driven. And with that, it sounds like a fun place to work with a lot of opportunities. So we wish you, the team, and everyone at Data Society the best of luck in the years ahead, and we can't wait to hear from you guys soon and see how things are going. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.